In March, the epidemic in China continued to spread. People in Shenzhen, Nanjing, Tianjin, Henan, and other regions reported that those with weak immune systems had been infected multiple times, and hospitals remained overloaded. Many people suffered from lung infections, with some even developing white lung. Regardless of age, sudden deaths occurred frequently. Not only were hospitals crowded with patients, but crematoriums were also full and overloaded. Many funeral homes were constantly recruiting new staff. A crematorium in Shenzhen, China, recently recruited security guards with a monthly salary of up to 12,000 yuan. A man who claimed to be brave successfully applied for the job, but he was so scared that he resigned after working only one night shift, became a topic of discussion among local people. A self-media person, Little Flower, recently said that it is now March, and people in the village have gone out to work one after another, but her 34-year-old brother has not found a suitable job and is very anxious. Just a few days ago, her cousin, who was far away in Shenzhen, introduced a job to her brother. At that time, the cousin only said that the job was a bit special, but the salary was high, 12,000 yuan a month, about $1,700. My brother's eyes lit up when he heard it. 12,000 yuan a month is a year's income from farm work in our village. So, without hesitation, her brother packed his luggage and went straight to Shenzhen. After arriving in Shenzhen, his cousin immediately called his friend, and soon his friend drove over. My brother was quite satisfied. He was of a good age, tall and strong. He should be able to do this job. However, his cousin's friend said there were 3 conditions for this job: courage, good health, and no heart disease or high blood pressure. My brother patted his chest and assured them there was no problem. Then he went to the hospital for a physical examination, and he passed. Next, his cousin accompanied him to the workplace. It took about an hour's drive out of the city to a more remote area. There was a cluster of houses, and that area felt desolate. My brother saw that it was a funeral home. His cousin's friend told him that there was nothing much to do on duty. The main task was night patrols. He was instructed not to talk at night, to ignore small animals as much as possible, not to wander around unnecessarily, and to only go to designated patrol areas. After making arrangements, his cousin and the friend left, leaving him alone at the funeral home. During the day, he felt fine. There were many people around. The number of funerals is high, so their relatives come and go continuously, and the atmosphere was lively, so he didn't feel anything unusual. At first, he was quite relaxed, but in the silent night, he heard all kinds of sounds: cats meowing, birds chirping, crows cawing, faint sobbing, and eerie, wailing cries. In the pitch-black darkness, fear crept in. He began to think about the various causes of death of those in the funeral home, from sudden death to jumping off buildings, the flu, car accidents, and more. The more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. His mind kept replaying scenes from horror movies he had seen, and his heart pounded uncontrollably. As his fear grew, he had to patrol once an hour. Although he carried a flashlight, he barely dared to move. Every second felt like torture. After barely making it to dawn, he immediately ran back to the dormitory to pack his things and called his cousin, saying he simply couldn't do the job. He said that even if he were offered 20,000 yuan a month, he still wouldn't do it. He was too scared to stay there alone. Too many bodies are brought in for cremation every day. It's bustling during the day, but really creepy at night. His cousin didn't try to persuade him and had to drive him back. And so this brave man worked at the crematorium for only one day and left without even asking for his salary. This incident became a local joke. Due to the special nature of work in funeral homes and crematoriums, most people see it as taboo and dare not take such jobs. However, with the continuous decline of China's economy in recent years and the high unemployment rate, competition for similar positions has become increasingly fierce. According to mainland media reports, in February this year, when the Yucheng Funeral Home in Shandong Province recruited funeral management personnel, 107 people signed up and passed the review to compete for the position.
As the epidemic spreads in mainland China, more and more signs indicate that a large number of people are dying in various places. Many bloggers on mainland social media questioned, does China still have 1.4 billion people? Recently, a mainland driver drove 300 miles and saw 17 families holding funerals. He lamented, "Death has entered its peak." The driver was shocked to see 17 funerals in 300 miles. Death has entered its peak. According to a video released by Overseas Breaking News on the X platform, many netizens recently said that they suddenly found no people in the city or the countryside. Where did everyone go? The man in the video said he saw 17 families holding funerals and only one family holding a wedding along a 310-mile road, which means that the ratio of births to deaths is 1 to 17. According to the video, a man said bluntly, "Death has reached its peak." He said he originally thought it would take another 5 or 10 years to reach the peak of deaths. During my business trip to Changsha on the national highway this time, I counted along the way and found that 17 families were holding funerals, and only one family was holding a wedding. That is, the ratio of births to deaths is 1 to 17. The man sighed. In just 310 miles of national highways. Not far away, I saw a funeral. And then not far away, I saw another family holding a funeral. Where are all the people? Do we really have 1.4 billion people in China? Mainland Douyin platform blogger Mr. Wang Talks About Finance said in a video on February 9th that he suddenly discovered a very scary phenomenon during the Chinese New Year. Everyone knows that there is no one in the city, and his cousin in the countryside also said that there are not many people in the countryside, and that the countryside is also deserted. You say China has a population of 1.4 billion. Where are all these people? The more I think about it, the more terrifying the question becomes. The blogger said he even began to doubt whether China really has a population of 1.4 billion. Do we really have 1.4 billion people in China? If there are really that many people, where did they go? They're not in the city, not in the countryside. There must be somewhere they've gone. Mainland netizens also questioned in the comment section, "I doubt whether there are even 1 billion people. The population must have dropped significantly. Otherwise, why would the country allow third births? There are definitely not 1.4 billion people now, because more people are dying than being born. I estimate there are only about 800 million. Who told you there are still 1.4 billion people? The country has less than 1 billion people now." The comments from netizens are shocking. Jiangxi netizen, "Many villages have no people left." Guangdong netizen, 800 million is the population ceiling of China. One village has nearly half the population it used to, and almost all nearby villages are the same. Anhui netizen, "There are definitely not 1.4 billion people because our production team used to have 200 people, but now there are only about 100. Beijing netizen, 5 people died in our village in a month, and they all ended up at the crematorium. Shandong netizens, "There was a large village in our area where 18 elderly people died from last autumn to the end of the year. It is truly a microcosm of the whole country, with more people leaving and fewer arriving." Jiangxi netizens, "In rural areas, many villages in our townships have disappeared, with not a single person remaining. More than a dozen villages under the entire village committee are gone, without a single resident. How can there be 1.4 billion people?" Hunan netizens, "We are neighbors here, and several people die every year. We haven't seen anyone getting married in years. There are fewer and fewer people." Jiangsu netizens, "I haven't been home for a few years due to the pandemic. When I returned to the village, many familiar faces were gone. Not long ago, the famous Chinese singer Fei Wang, 56, said in a TV interview that in her family of 4, her parents and brother had passed away, leaving her as the only one remaining. The number of deaths in 2 places in Jiangsu last year was 4 times the number of births. The national population in 2022 was only 1 billion. On February 11th, population data released on the government website of Zhangyan District, Taizhou City, Jiangsu Province, attracted attention. The data showed that in 2024, about 2,200 people were born in Zhangyan District, while about 8,000 people died, making the number of deaths 3.7 times the number of births. Even more shocking was the population data released on the website of the Xinhua Municipal Government of Taizhou. In 2024, there were about 3,300 births and about 14,500 deaths, making the death toll 4.4 times the birth toll. Many netizens called it shocking. Because the Chinese Communist Party's official statistics have always been seriously understated, many netizens questioned that if the above figures are already so shocking after being beautified, then imagine how terrifying the real data must be. Some netizens even analyzed the history of the CCP's fraudulent statistics and speculated that the real data might basically need to be multiplied by 3, or even more. Others commented, "Jiangsu is a province with a large population, and it's already like this. Other regions must be even worse." Xing Rentao, a columnist for Watching China, pointed out in an article on January 17, 2023, that in early July 2022, the Shanghai Public Security Bureau's database was hacked, leading to a large-scale data leak. The hacker, known as China Dan, publicly sold the personal information of Chinese mainland residents and police case data on a cybercrime forum, including the personal details of more than 1 billion residents, with a massive 23 terabytes of data. 2 independent security researchers confirmed that a database table containing names, birthdays, addresses, ID numbers, and ID card photos had about 970 million entries. The article stated, that is to say, the national population recorded by the Public Security Bureau is about 1 billion. How many people died during the 3-year pandemic? Musk's Grok 3 calculated astonishing data. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, CCP virus, in 2019, the CCP's cover-up of the epidemic's true impact has left the death toll in China during the 3-year pandemic a mystery to the outside world. Recently, Musk's artificial intelligence reasoning model, Grok 3, calculated astonishing figures. Based on data such as Chinese New Year consumption, passenger volume, GDP growth rate, and unemployment rate, Grok 3 estimated that China's population decreased by 150 million to 200 million during the 3-year pandemic. What is more noteworthy is that on January 15, 2023, Master Li Hongzhi, the founder of Falun Gong, pointed out that the CCP has been covering up the truth about the epidemic. In fact, 400 million people have died in China during the epidemic. At that time, many netizens questioned the 400 million data. A reader's message once made many netizens wake up from their dreams. More than 400 million people died in more than 3 years, an average of more than 300,000 a day. There are more than 2,000 counties in the country, and 180 people in one county, so it doesn't feel much. And a county has dozens of towns and hundreds of natural villages. It's just that more people have died in the past month than usual, and the momentum is fierce. Funerals are seen everywhere in the countryside, and many cities have to wait in line for months because they can't cremate. Recently, Zhou Yi, a citizen of Nanyang, Henan Province, told NTD reporters that the epidemic is now high and sudden death is quite common. Because there are too many people who have died, there are also queues at the funeral home. 46 relatives and friends around him have died. He said, "From the end of November to now, 46 of my friends and family members are gone. Many of them are in their 60s, 40s, 50s, and most of them are in their 40s. Currently, the influenza epidemic in mainland China is raging. The official claim is that 99% of it is influenza A, and the public generally doubts that it is the outbreak of the new coronavirus. Hospitals in Beijing, Shanghai, and other places are crowded with people, and the number of sudden deaths has increased sharply, and the deaths are younger. There are long queues for cremation in many funeral homes, and many new graves have been added in many rural mountainous areas and fields. A resident in Shenyang, Liaoning said that the number of deaths is more than during the epidemic. But the Chinese Communist Party authorities concealed the truth about the epidemic. Commentators believe that although this data was obtained through indirect analysis, it is enough to show that the Chinese Communist Party is falsifying information. Xing Tianxing, a commentator living in the United States. It is just sorting out some information that can be revealed from official sources and then calculating it in a model. Its data is also very different from the actual reduction data, but from the perspective of this AI disclosure, it proves that the CCP is falsifying and covering up. The CCP went to great lengths to conceal the epidemic and the reasons for the disappearance of the population. The outside world generally believes that the CCP wants to maintain its regime. The authorities are worried that the large number of deaths caused by the epidemic will trigger public resistance and social unrest.